Hi everyone. Hi everyone. It's Emma from Arise, and today I'm joined by Hannah Smith. Hannah just completed her first year tutoring with us at Arise, and she's had a great impact on the teens that she's been working with. This year she's done combined science, physics, and astronomy, and the feedback we've had from parents has been so positive. They've absolutely loved your classes. So thank you so much, Hannah. How have you found this last year?
I've loved working with Arise. Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, the students have been so like creative. It's been so great to hear like their thoughts on things, their different kind of ways of presenting what they've learned and things has been great. And being able to teach from such like an explicitly Christian perspective is it makes a good change from teaching in schools and things, of course. And it's so important. So it's so great to be able to be a part of it.
Brilliant. After summer, we're going to be adding in biology, iGCSE, and chemistry, iGCSE. And already, they've just gone live a little while ago, and already there's been so much excitement about these classes. In particular, what you just kind of alluded to just now is the fact that they're going to be taught from that Christian perspective. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think at first it seems kind of crazy, like science from a Christian perspective, like it's not what we're used to. But then I think when you think about it, like as Christians, Christ is at the center of everything. So why should like science be different from that? You know what I mean? So I try and kind of view it as it's not that we're doing science and then like adding a bit of Christian on top. It's that like first and foremost we are learning about God and about His creation, and science is just one of the tools to do that. So I think that like different perspective on it helps a lot. In terms of like the kind of practical, like what it looks like, we have like a lot of discussion I've found in the class this past year, just like asking kids what they think. Like we've learned some topic about science, so what does this tell us about what God is like? Or like, um, how could we use what we've learned to serve God better, or some things like that. Like being able to ask those questions is good. And yeah, being kind of explicit about like what our responsibility is, as Christians and as like kind of stewards of creation is has been helpful, and when we're learning about different things. What would God want us to do with this is good. I think I found it helpful as well just to be honest about like what science really is. I think a lot of people teach science as this kind of fount of all wisdom and knowledge, where it's not. Science is just people. It's made by people. You know what I mean? So I always try and when we learn a new topic, talk about like this is the person that discovered this, because I think it's important for kids to know that it did come from a person. Science isn't like, yeah, it's not like above God in any way. It was made by people. And so like the Bible is the foundation and then the science kind of comes afterwards. I think that's quite helpful and to help us kind of have a bit more like critical thinking to be able to see things in science and match them up to the Bible and kind of figure out what makes the most sense is a good skill that we're trying to learn. So
Yeah. I think it's also important to understand that there's so many scientists who have made absolutely groundbreaking discoveries. People like Newton and Faraday, they did so from this foundation of wanting to glorify God with their
mm,
wanting to use the vehicle of science to explore the nature of who God is. And that is, we can't, we can say that as this kind of like almost flippantly, but that's actually a really profound thought. That
mm,
so much of what we actually understand about the universe in a very profound way has been out of that endeavor to understand who God is and to glorify Him. And likewise, a lot of not so good science has come out of people who are atheists and who have their worldview is driven by that desire to disprove God
mm,
and so you've got these two. There's just as you said that the science is something that has been man-made. It's also not neutral. People come to
mm,
the table with their own worldviews and their own ideas, and it clouds their perception. It clouds how they do it. it not even clouds it, just it colors what they do.
Yeah.
It's very hard to get away with that understanding of what is science, what is science in the most purest sense of the word. Because a lot of what we hear is science isn't actually science. So that's really good that that idea of teaching teens to be critical, think critically about
Mm,
what the ideas that they're engaged with, and looking at the source, and the idea that ultimately everything is underpinned by the word of God.
mm.
How do you find specifically teaching the IGCSE syllabi? Because obviously you're doing more than one science, um, from a Christ-centered worldview.
Yeah, I think it's something that you might think would be more challenging than it is. Like I think when I started teaching, a lot of people would say like, "Oh, how could you teach science as a Christian?" But there actually isn't a barrier between science and the Bible. That's not really accurate. So yeah, I think there are certain topics that kids need to learn for the GCSE syllabus, like you have to have some understanding of the Big Bang Theory, and things like that. But I think what if you've established that basis of like understanding what science is and the critical thinking, it becomes not a problem, to be able to say, here is a theory that some scientists have. You have to know what it is. You don't have to think it's right. And like I find that if you have that basis right from the beginning of like a solid understanding of what science is and its place compared with the Bible and things, then it becomes not that big of an issue, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
The thing is, I speak to Big Bang. I can't speak very well to evolution stuff because I'm not a biologist.
Yeah.
But, the thing with the Big Bang theory is, as well, what we understand as Big Bang theory is so widely there's so within the scientific community there's a lot of not lack of understanding. A lot of the ideas that came in when it was initially put forward have actually been disproven. And
Hmm.
the only real part of Big Bang Theory that really stands up to a lot of scientific scrutiny is the idea of origins, that the Big Bang Theory came out of the idea of the expanding universe, and that is evidence for an origin to all of creation, and that actually is a deeply Christian idea.
Hmm.
Before Hubble discovered this idea that the galaxies were moving apart, we've got this expanding universe. That the scientific community at that time believed the universe to have been infinite, to be it's living inside of an infinite time space. It had no beginning, it would have no end, and therefore you didn't need a Genesis in the beginning narrative.
Hmm.
And the Big Bang Theory actually kind of blew that out the water, that actually the universe had an origin and a beginning. And as I said, that a lot of the stuff that's come since then in recent years has left more questions for secular astrophysicists and physicists than answers with regard to the origins of the universe. And so it's what we see in
Yeah.
the syllabus is that's taught all the idea of the Big Bang. That's a in the physics paper. There's very often a Big Bang question,
Hmm.
and I think maybe most years that might it's not cut and dry. It might look cut and
No.
dry when you read it in an IGCSE or an A level or a higher physics textbook, but it really isn't.
Yeah. And it's good that we can kind of have the space to like discuss it in more depth than that, to talk about all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you briefly tell us what? Oh, no, I shall come back to it in a minute. Is there any advice for families who are looking at a science IGCSE, but they're unsure which one to choose? Because if, as a parent, and you're looking with kids who are a little bit older, you're looking at things like university entrance, college entrance, or apprenticeships,
Hmm.
and vast majority of them require, even if you don't, it's not a sciencey thing, they will require your English, your maths, and one science at that kind of GCSE or Nat 5 level. So is that kind of, this is one of these core subjects
No.
for us to cover as teens. What advice would you give parents or and teens who are struggling to know which one to choose if they're not sciencey and it's like, I just need to do this.
Need to do something.
I need to do something.
Yeah, I mean it is a difficult choice, and it's I guess it'll completely depend on the student and their kind of personality and interests and things. I guess combined science, the IGCSE combined science is a really good like balance of everything. So if they're not too fussed on going in depth on any particular science, that gives a good little kind of intro to everything, and then it's helpful because then they might after doing that decide that they like one in particular and want to study that further. So that's quite helpful. I would say physics is good if you're very into maths. That's definitely the most mathsy one. I find some kids like biology because it's quite relatable. So if your student is the kind of person who needs to be able to kind of relate to what they're learning. Like a lot of kids like biology because you can talk about diseases, you can talk about the human body, and obviously they have experience of that, so that can be helpful. Chemistry, I guess, is the most kind of pure sciencey one in the sense that like it's less like visual. I feel like you can visualize a lot of the things in physics and you've experienced a lot of things in biology, but still like so chemistry is maybe a bit more sciencey. I guess astronomy for us that it's a unique opportunity to learn astronomy. I don't know many other providers that are providing astronomy from a Christian perspective. So if they have any interest in that, it's definitely worthwhile. But yeah, I think definitely doing a science is so important. Like you said, lots of like universities and colleges ask for a science, and even aside from that, I think it's worthwhile skills, even if you're not interested in the facts of science so much. Like those critical thinking skills and all that are so crucial. Um, yeah, I guess a big barrier for a lot of people is the like maths that you need to be able to do in
Yeah,
science, but I don't think it's not as big a barrier I think as people see. People can be quite afraid of doing maths, but the maths that you need to do at science, there's a blog post on the Arise website
yeah,
about it and like ways that you can develop those skills just like in your daily life, just like measuring things for cooking or looking at graphs on the news or anything like that. So yeah, it's not as big a barrier as people might think.
thing with the maths is the maths that we do in the IGCSEs, you're learning the same math skills when you're doing IGCSE maths anyway.
Yeah.
They do complement each other. I think something that a lot of parents of my generation um are a bit surprised about is, so you're a wee bit younger, it might have been different when you were just sitting it. So when
Mm.
I was at school, biology was a science to take if you hated maths because there was hardly any maths in the curriculum back when
Mm.
I sat it. So there's lots of parents of kind of my age, their kids hate maths, so they will do biology and then they start the biology and they have really pulled biology up with regard to the maths, and the parents are like, there's so much maths in it, and it's because there's that conception that biology doesn't have any maths, and it's not true. And biologists still need to use maths because they need to analyze their data and all these and the to be able to interpret results, you need the language of mathematics to be able to do that. If you're a biologist or a physicist, there's still maths
Yeah.
in biology. What would you say to parents who think, "We'll pick biology; it's the easy option, and there's no maths"?
Yeah, you might be in for a shock, you're right. There definitely is. I guess it's knowing like what maths there is in the different subjects, I guess, because biology is a lot of like, yeah, interpreting data and things like that. So all your kind of like graphs things and averages and percentages, those kind of skills you need for biology. Whereas physics is maybe a bit more like formula and working with equations. So it's different maths, but they're still maths. So yeah, and I think there's skills that you need in life. Being able to interpret data is an important skill, whether you're a scientist or not. So it's worthwhile learning. So it's worth it.
Yeah, it is worth it. It's absolutely worth it. And it can be done. It's getting overcoming that fear
Yes.
of the maths.
Yeah, for
Um
sure.
or not that no, no, not with the combined science. My son's doing the combined science class this year because he's like that boy who is not wanting to go down a scientific kind of route, but he needs that science. He wants to go into apprenticeship. They
Mm.
they need a science, so he's done the combined science and he's absolutely loving it. It's been a really good choice, and the way you teach it, you do a little bit of you don't you kind of keep cycling round so that they get a break from all the biology or all the physics. So
Yeah.
you mix it round so that they get that break. So it's been really good. He's loved the 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 variety of
Mm. That's good.
things. Can you tell us briefly what will be covered in biology, chemistry, physics, and astronomy? Just a little bit. I know it's a huge.
Yeah. I'll give you the highlights, I guess. I know that there'll be bigger lists that are on the website and
Yeah,
stuff,
if you go to
but
the website, and there's going to be blog posts coming out very soon for. There's already some of them are already out. I know biology and chemistry are definitely coming. I think physics is there already, and
yeah, I
astronomy
think
is
so.
already.
Yeah.
I think it's biology and chemistry, which is in the pipeline, which will have more information. But yeah, a brief kind of
Yeah. That's fair.
highlight.
So the kind of highlights then. So chemistry, we'll look at like atoms, and the kind of bonding between atoms and thing, and what an atom is, I guess. We'll look at the periodic table, how it's structured, and also kind of the history of like where that's come from, and then like chemical reactions. That's always gets a bit more exciting. Um, Different types of reactions and how they work. So that's kind of the highlights of chemistry. Um, Biology, we'll look at cells, the structure of cells. We'll do quite a lot on nutrition, so like a healthy diet, the digestive system, all of that stuff, and then also like plant nutrition and comparing them. We'll also do a bit on genetics, which I think kids usually find quite interesting. So DNA and stuff, and then also like how traits are passed on from parents to children, which is interesting.
Yeah.
This year in astronomy, we're looking at like exoplanets. So we did like the solar system planets this year. So next year we're going to exoplanets. We'll look at the like life cycle of a star, which I always find as people find quite interesting, how different types of stars and things like that. And we're also going to do quite a big chunk on cosmology. So the kind of big questions about the universe and where it came from. And I think being able to do that from a Christian perspective is very exciting. Yeah. Physics, we're going to do some kinetic theory. So that's like how particles behave in solids, liquids, and gases. We're going to look at electromagnetism. So that'll be a big interesting one, kind of the different uses of that. Um, Also planning on looking at like nuclear radiation this year, which will be interesting. I think it'll be helpful. We'll have be able to chat about the kind of ethical choices around how we use that and things like that, which is helpful as well. And then combined science, I guess, is just a mixture of things. So we cover a lot of the same topics as you do in the separate science courses, but just not really in as much depth. So, we'll do some biology, we'll talk about like respiration and things, different like processes inside living things. And we'll do chemistry, we'll talk about chemical reactions, rates of reactions and stuff. And I think for physics, we're going to do a big chunk on like electricity and things this year. So a bit of everything.
Of everything. And as we just mentioned, the individual blog posts for each subject will go into a little bit more depth about what
Mm.
will be actually covered. In what ways do you make the classes engaging for teens? We know there's this perception of online classes that they're just staring at a screen. You mentioned as well that there's
Mm.
a lot of discussion. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. I think once you like have been teaching online for a little while, it becomes like, man, how could it possibly be boring? But I get it seems like it might be from the outside. So yeah, I'm a big fan of like discussion and like inquiry type learning to kind of have kids figure some things out themselves. And that's helpful to do online. But there's lots of different kind of tools that we've used. So there's lots of good like online simulation things we've used for different classes. In particular, one I can think of recently for our physics class, I had a website where they could go on and like build circuits. And I actually had them do that before I taught them anything about circuits. So it meant they could kind of play around completely unbiased and discover things. And I would maybe give some suggestions. Oh, what would happen if you connected that there instead? And saw them kind of figure out some of the rules for circuits. So that was cool. Also, kids have been able to be a bit creative. So even just using like the whiteboard on Zoom, I had a task recently in a science class where we've been learning about like the different ways that energy is transferred, that heat is transferred. And so I had them all design a house that was like as efficient as possible. So, and they all just have got their own page on the whiteboard and were able to draw and like label, the different installation they were doing. So that's helpful as well to let them be a bit creative. Um, we play a lot of games to kind of consolidate learning. One in particular that I enjoy is called the unfair game. Kids get annoyed at it because it's unfair, but that's a good fun one. Just, little almost silly things, but I think it helps to. There's only so many times you can just do a worksheet over and over again, so it's helpful to
Yeah.
do these other things, and it's easier to do online than I think it would be not actually things like that. What else? There's a website I use quite a bit called Mentimeter where you can like post a question and students can answer it online and it kind of collates all their answers and there's different ways you can do it. So for example, you can do like a word cloud. So I quite often do that at a start of a topic. So I think I did one recently where I said like put in any words you can think of that are related to electricity. And they just put in, so it's helpful to see like kids' prior knowledge.
Yeah.
So that they will know some words, but they might not know what they mean, and let them all put them in. That was good. Or you can also have kids like rank things. So in a science class recently, I had the question where it was a list of properties of metals, and I got them to rank how important they thought they were. And they all kind of vote and they can see each other's votes and things. So that's quite helpful as a kind of collaborative thing as well. Um, yeah, then there's other things like Blooket or Kahoot are kind of
Uh-huh.
fun online things that kids like. But yeah, it's all kind of discussion things. One of my favorite kind of starter activities is I do odd one out. So I'll just put four images. I won't explain what the topic is and ask kids which one do you think is the odd one out. And it could be anything. And also quite often they come up with better answers than what I had thought of. So that's quite helpful. Because if the more simple you make it, the better the answers are. So it
Uh-huh.
might just be like, I'll put four shapes. Which one is the odd one out? So they might say, "Oh, I think it's the circle because it's got no corners," or "I think it's that one because it's the smallest." All right, and it's quite interesting. They never say what I expect they're gonna say, and that's it. I think the more like student led the class is, the more engaging it is because they're
Yeah.
much more interesting than I am. So
Yeah. That's the key. If they are, if you hook them and engage them, their brains are going to be active in that process of learning. They're not going to
yeah,
be switched off and gazing off into space or
yeah,
on another screen in the room. It's like, and that sounds so fun as well. And it just, yeah, it completely just collaborates with what my son was saying. He has absolutely loved your class and has been really, really engaged with the learning process. So it's been great. Your classes are been so exciting and it's just I'm so glad that we're able to offer the full range of
Mm,
sciences this year, particularly being able to teach biology from like a Christian perspective because it's one of these subjects that a lot of Christian families feel a bit apprehensive about
mm,
exploring. And having it taught with that good, solid foundation where your kids are going to be exam ready, and able to pass that exam, or growing knowledge, or growing that ability to love that love of that subject, because it's not just about. It shouldn't be just about passing the exam. We live in
yeah,
the real world, and we all understand. We have got there that often our teens they just want to pass that exam, but as parents, we want our children to have that love of learning, that ability to think critically, that
Mm.
ability to look at the world and the universe and see the hand of the creator in it. And so we're so excited with what you've got planned for the coming year. And we said, that there's the blog posts if you want any more information about Hannah's classes. If you have any specific questions about Hannah's classes, please email arise@arisehomeeducation.com and we'll answer. We can send them off to Hannah and she'll be able to reply to them. And yeah, there's lots of information on the website, and I'll be linking down below each of the different classes there for you. Thank you so much, Hannah, for
Yeah,
your
thank you.
time today. It's been really lovely to hear you talk and to share about your classes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.